Guys, I don't know about y'all, but I definitely think that this year's Logger series across the board has been one of the most enthralling versions of the series to date. Obviously, you have the Irish and the All Blacks series last year, but as a totality, this year's series has been nothing but entertaining. Blockbusters finishes left and right. Let's break them down. Despite at my own expense, let's go.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets.
Zala, back to Baker, Baker with the fit. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the drive. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I've said in the cold open, guys, I really think that this year's Lager Series has been the best in the 6 years that I've been watching and playing rugby. Overall, in the U.S., this is probably one of the most, I think, even matches. Just looking at, you have great forward play, great back interplay. There's stuff for everyone to like. If you like kicking, this series has been really great at that, other than the first week, which obviously had a little bit of downfalls, but outside of that, great showing all around. Let's break down the games, and then we'll go through the team of the series, and hopefully we'll have room for some other topics towards the end of the show. I think I'll start off with probably, in my opinion, I'm not going to say worst, because I'm not going to say this because this was a good game, but if I had to pick one game out of the 3 series that I would say for people to avoid watching, I think it would be this one. It's the Wallabies versus Wales match. I really thought that Wales looked really complacent without Rainwright in the back row, and just having a hard time outside a set piece or really blocking to retain ball. It just was a hard thing to watch. Don't get me wrong. They have Tane Basham. They have guys like Tane Plumtree. You have Daffyd Jenkins. All those boys back there. Tom Raffel. But for some reason, they just looked a little skittish back there. I think they lost a little bit of that composure with Rainwright gone. I think a lot of it had to do with Dweelik kind of having to hold too many hats this game just because of that. They lost a lot of not only the physicality with Rainwright, but they also lost his great ball carry and breakdown skills. Now, they do have that in spades, but I think not to the same combination in one player like them. I think they really rolled with what Rainwright could do last week before he got hurt, and having him with that knee injury just really hurt them as a whole in this lineup. Obviously, Australia had a very easy time fumbling everyone to that breakdown, and I think it really helps slow down the Welsh ball big time. If you're looking at the Welsh team, I'm pretty sure they were just expecting the normal defend at the width type of Australia team. They weren't expecting a lot of guys to be really getting pushed into that breakdown to either slow down the ball or really hold back the Welsh counter ruck. And surprisingly, in spades, you see backs doing the Lord's work, and by all means, I'm very, very happy to see that as a forward. As I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's a wonderful thing to see backs doing forward work, whether it's hitting a scrum, hitting a breakdown, helping with a maul, pushing it over, being a big boy, even though you're small, doubling your size and just getting in there and saying, I can do the same job you can and just as much, if not better. And it's a great thing to see. I think the Welsh were a little bit surprised in that, and I think that went in through the rest of this game. Between that and just the overall explosiveness of this game from Australia, I think they were expecting a lot more structure, and I think this shows a lot of flexibility with Joe Schmidt to be able to play like whether it's his old Irish ways of just straight structure, set piece, and just bowling people over, to this version, which is more open and obviously a little bit more frenetic. I loved both versions. I think it'll be good to really have that variety for the Australians to have, because they can really realistically do both, I think, when everyone is healthy. And hopefully doing this, once they get Angus Bell back, this game will be money moving forward, especially in November, possibly in Cardiff. I think it'll be a great thing to see. Overall, I think Kellaway's footprint, Andrew Kellaway to be specific, throughout this game, I think is very reminiscent of Joe Schmidt's game plan of the first clash versus the Blues and the Chiefs last year. I thought it was effortless. It's kind of like in that same interchangeability that he used Zarn Sullivan and Bowden Barrett in, just that ability to not only kick, but to really set up a lot of the open plays that really were conducted this year, kind of in almost that, I guess I want to say Will Jordan, but not really, because I don't necessarily consider Will Jordan as good as Andrew Kellaway under the high ball. But you have that option to just have him roll, whether he's a fifth pivot or he's just a guy out there just making plays happen. more freneticism is always better. And especially in that first try that Andrew Keller set up to Fraser McWright, that really showed a lot of opportunities that they weren't really expecting. They were pushed back into their own end zone. They were really having to really push out that weight, get a little tight in the middle, obviously in that breakdown, but then to spread that ball out with Jake Gordon just managing space effectively, getting it out to Kellaway, who then tried to probe, but they immediately saw the pocket and back. Great game management by him to really set that chip over, obviously to himself, and then back to McWright, and then back to Dungunu. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful setup. I loved it. We need to see more open play like this from Australia, and I think this is only just the great beginning to an awesome development for them. As we roll through, I really enjoyed having the pivot not be the full star. Uh, Lola Seal last week, I've talked about this, had a lot to do with last week's victory versus Wales. Whether it was just being in the pocket, setting up plays, cross kicking, setting up good passes, probing. He wasn't doing all of that. I'm not going to say entirely, but he wasn't doing it as much. And I think it was really nice to really help with all the backs sharing the responsibility, whether it was Ben Donaldson, Andrew Kellaway being back there with his experience at 15, having Nick White and Jake Gordon, both helping to manage. And on top of that, obviously, you have Lola Seal. And also Dungunu. Have we not forgot? Filippo Dungunu can basically play all these positions, and he's a freak. He's an absolute freak. I mean, the guy could have almost scored a hat trick in this game. I was very impressed by him and his performance, and we'll go into him a little bit later. But overall, just I think it's nice when the 10, obviously, I think learning off of Eddie Jones or Carter Gordon doesn't have to share the entirety of the load of the game. It's nice to be able to spread it out. As I've said once, I'll say it again. When you play fast and with more confidence and with less responsibilities, you play better. And I think that's just what this was. Joe Schmidt simplified the game plan, really allowed his backs to take work. And I think this is a beautiful showcase for that. Overall, I really liked having the problem of too many backs. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Morgan Tuinui or one of the sideline commentators for this game, but they had mentioned that Filippo Dungunu being at 11 and being so good will hopefully, you know, in a not so negative way, not hold back the rest of the back development given his age in Australia. With the backs you got from, like, say, you got Jock Campbell, you got Tom Wright and the Brumby boys, you got, that whole lineup. And I don't think it's a problem. I think if we learned anything from American football, maybe in basketball, where it's a little bit more me, or even like I guess soccer, if they even have that problem. I'm not sure. Not big of a soccer fan. But in American football, as we all know, for those of us who are NFL or college fans, having multiple players is not a problem. It is a blessing to have that kind of depth. And when you have Dungunu, who is basically a Swiss Army knife, he can play at 15, really. He could play at the wing, as he's done so far. He's played at 13, I believe, for the Rebels for majority of this year. You have that ability to, and on top of that, I probably could say you could probably play 12 or 10 if you really came down to it. Having that kind of flexibility and that Swiss Army knife in your lineup, I think if we learned from South Africa, is a good thing to have. And I'm not sure that it would hold anything back. If anything, I think it would help grow the game, because Dungunu's ability to not only stretch the field, not only downhill, but also from side to side is what makes him special. If you look at all the tries he's done from this week and last week, his ability, and throughout really the Super Rugby season, his ability to just stretch the field from hash to hash is a beautiful thing to see. Not a lot of backs in Australia can really, I think, pull that off. I mean, Tom Wright, I guess, can, but not exactly to the same effect. Having him down there to be able to not only teach, but even to show examples on the field, I think for film purposes, is going to be great for the development of any back in that back line. And I can't wait to see if they can duplicate that success into other players. Overall, I think Australia is having just a great go of things so far. I'm not going to say and jinx it that they're going to be back yet, but I think my bench lines for them to be on their way closer to being back would be to finish the TRC in at least second place. I think that's only fair given their performance, and to push the Autumn Nations, maybe in that third, second-ish area, I think would be a great thing to see. I think the lowest I could go is fourth. I think that's only fair. And I think personally, Australia could be very well on their way to be on the fast track to being back. I think that this is a good shot. This is a perfect time to hire Joe Schmidt for the summer series, and then obviously to end off with the World Cup being his last year of his contract. If he can continue this kind of performance moving day in, day out, I'm not saying he has to be first place, but at least keep them in that second or third place competitive area. By all means, I'll, I'll tip my hat to you, Joe. And say Australia didn't fumble the bag on that. They fumbled the bag provincially, but not internationally. Let's move on to the Baka versus Ireland. I think first off, I think I have to say this. I was really surprised that Franz Malherbe was just not only managed to give full test readiness, given that he played almost, if not the full 80, but also destroyed the Irish scrum on both Tog Furlong, Andrew Porter, but then on top of that, Finley Beam and Keen Healy. It was just beautiful, for him to do that at his age. Are you kidding me? Normally he's on the bench, and his starting spot's given to, let's see, Stephen Kitsoff, but Stephen Kitsoff is injured. You got Trevor Enyakanye, who has been normally in there with Oxniche. But, for him to just do that and ball out to the point where I don't even think they needed to even think about putting on the bench player was beautiful. And on top of that, outside of set piece and really, really pushing it on ball carry, his ability to just bounce off the first man is beautiful. I think he's hitting a new, uh, I guess, kind of renaissance, more or less like a second win, I guess, for his career in the Razi Erasmus rebrand, and this is a beautiful thing to see. I think Nakanye could be on notice. Don't get me wrong, he's still a freak, but I think he might have to wait behind him because Franz, when he gets going, I've watched the Stormers ever since I started watching rugby. They're my favorite team. Having Franz Malherbe at 100% is a totally different unit. Despite him being a big boy, that boy got some wheels, and let me tell you, I've seen him break lines before, and I think he'll do it again if given the opportunity. Outside of that, I think that the Boca really just need to get out of their way at the breakdown. I think specifically you can highlight the original or second penalty kick from Jack Crowley that was allowed because Quagga Smith and Peter Steph Dutoy, one went low, Quagga Smith went a little high, went off his feet, tried to play the ball hands in the ruck, and unfortunately got the whistle blown before he could get blown out of there. I think as I've said, having a Swiss Army knife is great. Don't get me wrong. But also having that same Swiss Army knife and Peter Steph Dutoy, who I've always said is basically a mirror to the ball. He's always around it at every step of the way, to both be in that same area and have the Irish take them out of the game. 1, 2, on top of that, also to give up a penalty right in front of the post is not a good idea. I think they were just too much in their own way, especially in the fact of, given that this game was so physical and that it was so staccato in the motion of the ball, there wasn't a lot of big open plays or set piece work. Just having that was a loss. I think they are not the size I wish I had when I would be going into the breakdown. Personally, I would rather have had Malcolm Marks be in there, kind of help blow off that area. That way Quagga Smith doesn't go up over the top. Or, I think they're definitely missing Jasper Visa, who is still on ban. I believe he still has about a month left, so he'll be missing, I believe, part of the Rugby Championship and a little bit of their tour in Australia, and I think in Italy or Portugal, for his actions in the URC. It's just, but having that kind of guy who's a bowling ball, bowling a China shop, that kind of power to strength ratio would be perfect to have in that set situation. And Quagga Smith, despite his multifaceted approach, is not necessarily the kind of size that you want contesting against the Irish, because those big boys will definitely destroy you or put you in a bad spot 9 times out of 10. I definitely thought that each side could have avoided about 9 points if they just listened to the ref on offsides at the breakdown, learning to roll and just getting in better positions, and had some self-control on all assets. For example, that first kick from, Jack Crowley that led to a 3-0 zip, that easily could have been avoided if Peter Steph Dutoy just didn't get in between the man, allowing the Boca to really get that ball. I really thought that they should just let that go and just lit him up. But, oh well, I guess such is life. And let's move on. I will say, though, that little wall that they did towards the end was beautiful. I think they're learning from the Springboks in many ways. I think that was a Springbok thing to do, to really just have all the guys turn around and just basically create a wall off the kick. They've been doing that for years, and I think it's only getting publicized really now. I think having that look from Andy Farrell was a beautiful change for the Irish. I think it would have been perfect had they not caught the ball. I think at that point you just gotta let it go, man. Just come on, just let free play be free play. I think that whistle would have been blown regardless, just because it was knocked forward. Perhaps it would have been an advantage to South Africa and a lot of free play. But eh, hopes and dreams, I guess, right? That's another one. I definitely think also that it was perfect poise by Frawley to line up both of those drop goals in a contested pocket. The first one you had what? Quagga Smith and Peter Steph Dutoy, and the second one you had Peter Steph Dutoy, and I believe it was Werner Koch in that area just around the ball, or maybe it was Marco van Staden around that kick, and for both of them to just step up, be relatively just nonchalant about it, and just drop that thing right down the center of the post line. It was beautiful. It's kind of hard because this game, you're looking at my favorite Northern Hemisphere team would be Ireland, and then the Welsh, and then obviously the Boca is my favorite team just in general for the world. So it was a hard match to watch. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is only good for both sides if you look at the development that they're going to learn from both teams. Obviously Ireland is leaning more towards the electric, the open field kind of finishes, from James Lowe and friends. They're looking with Jack Crowley to really get that ball playing the width. And South Africa is doing the same thing. They're both evolving together, and it's going to be interesting to see which takes which steps, which team will take, pirate a couple things from another. It's the perfect option. Andy Farrell's leaning into that Joe Schmidt mold, I think, more and more this year, but just with a little bit more of that open flair. And it's beautiful to see evolving rugby begin, and this is probably the best proving ground to do it. So I love this game. Sad for the Boca, but definitely love that the Irish are able to draw this series up. I think when this goes to Dublin, I think this would be a whole different animal. Obviously, as we all know, Northern Hemisphere crowds are it's a very hostile environment, I'll say that. And having that kind of physicality play out in a home stadium, I think will be an interesting real benchmark for them to see whether or not the Boca can overcome a lot of the deficiency that they've had over the course of this series, or whether the Irish are just close in and close out and just defend the castle. But last but not least, on to my favorite game of the series. I have the All Blacks versus England. I thought this game was probably the most anticipated for me, and I thought gave me the best product holistically throughout the whole of the series. The All Blacks versus England has been a beautiful showing, not only for the All Blacks just to show that their ability to just kind of, obviously put people on the back foot was beautiful. I mean, having Razor get his real first win on the job was great to see. Having a lot of the old heads come on late and just dominate and just destroy everything that the English and Steve Borthwick hold dear was a nice touch. But I think for the English as well, I think Jamie George said it best. When they went in, they came in with a lot of baggage coming from that rebuild that Borthwick has been doing. The controversies of losing Eddie, losing a lot of those boys in the back. A lot of people didn't really like what Steve Borthwick did moving into the final. I thought that was great. And then coming in, I think England showed a lot of grit. They made me, I think, admire them a little more. Most of the time, for those of you who don't personally know me, I think England is a great team. I think they have great sides, but I think they hold a lot of what we like to call in Hawaii high maka maka attitude, or what you would call stuck up attitude for themselves, being not only, I guess, the founders of rugby in a sense, but also that they're just better. They have a little bit of that shithousery type of mentality. We all know what it is. Come on, guys. Of just they just like to start stuff, and I think that they're like the bullies of the Northern Hemisphere. I wouldn't even say that the Welsh is like that or the Irish. I would just say it would be England personally, just from me watching them. But they have a lot of good athletes, and I definitely respect them. And it was an interesting game to see them do work. But let's get into the breakdown of this game. I really like the battle between D-Mac and Alex Mitchell. I think it was something truly we behold. The back and forth kicking, the management of space. Having Alex Mitchell back there is huge. Don't get me wrong, Ben Youngs is a freak. They have a couple good guys as well back there, but Alex Mitchell is that dude. I think he cemented himself into that 9 position forever, at least till someone better comes along, until further notice. And his game management was been really impeccable. And to see him just duke it out with D-Mac on the boot, beautiful thing to watch early. I thought it was really funny how they didn't pick George Furbank for this match. and they brought back Freddie Stewart. You may think that Freddie is probably the best 15 probably in the world. I would say next to, as a pure 15, next to say a former Jordy Barrett or even a semi not injured Will Jordan when he's even remotely healthy. But I wouldn't say he's as proficient in the high ball as Freddie. Just to bring back to reinvigorated, I guess would be the word, the structure of the English side. Furbank, I think, brought more of that defense, that physicality, that ability to just kind of being more of an offensive unit. But having the structure that Freddie Stewart brought, I thought really allowed Marcus Smith to kind of do some more YOLO balls and George Ford type of things, or just composure while putting pressure on DMAC and Jordy was the entirety again of the English defense. And I thought that was beautiful to see. I thought the All Blacks definitely did too much. I definitely think that they could have had a stranglehold in this game relatively early. I think we all know if we watch the game or watch the highlights of just them passing back and forth, looking like an Australia, just blah blah. Like we're not the Harlem Globetrotters here, guys. Come on, let's focus more on real structured footy. And unfortunately, they just didn't measure up in that regard, and they messed up and gave the ball a lot back to England that they weren't supposed to have. But again, going back to the Freddie thing, this is where Freddie would not be really as effective, I think, and putting themselves in this position. I think George Furbank would have been a better spot on the defensive end to really stop a lot of these balls, put guys in better positions on offense. But I don't get it. Supposedly Freddie Stewart, according to a match day interview, was not in form for the first match, and so that's why Furbank came back. But then he was in form this week, aka he saw how good Furbank was and probably decided, put me in the lineup, Steve. And Steve just did it. I'm not saying that Steve Borthwick doesn't know more than me, but I'm simply just saying that Furbank could have helped a lot more in these defensive roles than that. But yeah, whatever. I really thought that the front row battle with De Groot and company, I thought really helped a lot on the New Zealand end to really cement themselves more in the game. Last week, they were getting bowled around by Jamie George, by Finn Baxter, and those boys. And De Groot said, "I'm that dude." He nutted up and he took that ball and punched it down their throat. And he said, "This is my scrum and I own it now." And it was beautiful to see. I definitely missed the Georgia ref because of that. And it was an interesting battle to say the least. I really thought that Ollie Lawrence, Emmanuel Waboso, Charles Cunningham South, Mario Toje around every instance of the ball, kind of like a Peter Steph Dutoy, Quagga Smith, and just messing things up to do really anything on the All Black ball for a majority of this game was beautiful. They really forced, I love that England really forced the All Blacks off the back foot. They took their foot out of the controlling part of the gas and they basically just said, "Okay, we're going to give you the ball here. What are you going to do with it? Okay, we're going to take away your two best guys in DMAC and Jordy. What are you going to do? Okay, we'll let Stevie P do his little side steps, maybe get 15, 20 meters. We'll let Mark Talea get one break, but if he messes it up, that's on him." And just took away everything that the All Blacks did great and just allowed for little things was a beautiful thing to see. Overall, I definitely think that they need to face more teams like this more often. Northern Hemisphere teams are great. As I've said before, as we all know, they're better at the breakdown. I think they're more downhill oriented and trench oriented than really any Southern Hemisphere side outside of South Africa. And it showed. They got bullied for a majority of this game. But as we all like to know, that things can change with just the flick of a hat, and it really did, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I really loved, I think my favorite play of all, going back to the Marcus Smith talk, was Tommy Freeman. I know I didn't talk really much about him last week, but the guy, I really thought I liked what he brought to the wing shirt. Really doing the Lord's work. Not only just hitting breakdowns, being boomfa at the tackle, blowing people up, playing like a forward, like a loose forward on the edge. It was beautiful to see. Mossing probably one of the best wings under the high ball in Mark Talea in the world, saying bye-bye, little boy. For all of us who don't know that joke, look up Jordy Nelson's top 100 from 2014, I believe. Ike Taylor, probably one of the most underrated, low key corners. He was good, but he wasn't that good. I think got featured a lot those years. And his thing with Jordy Nelson over Orlando Scandrick in 2014 was just it was gold. Watch that for me, please. For all those who don't know, just little boy, and just took that thing over. I need that in my life because that was cutting promos right there. That catch, I think that was definitely highlight worthy in every sense of the word, and I think it's actually got viral on majority of the rugby outlets out there. That really, I think, put some hurt into having Mark Talea on there. I think he came in there a little high off that, and then next thing you know, he just gets between the mess ups and just getting destroyed on that one. I think it really put him back to earth. It was nice to see. But overall, I think we need to go back to what I said with how things can change. And Bowden Barrett be really the MVP for this one. I can't wait for all those who didn't get tickets. You guys can meet up in San Diego. A lot of the Southern California clubs are going down there for the All Blacks versus Fiji. I'm going to bring a lot of my Bowden Barrett gear. Hopefully, I'll get it signed. Really praying on this because that boy was the MVP for this game, breaking things, kicking. I think he had like almost 300 kicking meters just off the boot alone. He had 3 carries for 42 meters. Beautiful. Majority of them breaks. That little sidestep he did to really put Mark Talea into the corner, get about maybe 15, 20 meters down range, toss that ball at the right time when Wabosa was coming in. It just everything. You can call it glazing. You can call it whatever you want. It was beautiful. It is what a legend does. And I said it once and I'll say it again. Last week, they should have put Bowden Barrett in the starting 10 spot. I love D-Mac. Don't get me wrong. Still one of the most explosive players of all time. But Bowden Barrett is him. They put him in Stevie P. I think this game would have been a lot different from the start. But, I think it was nice that they brought him on a little late. Really threw off a lot of the game plan, took away a lot of the good things that England was doing and just put them on the back foot and did exactly what the Uno reverse card is. They just, because they were on the back foot and they couldn't stop them. I don't know what Razor was on though by not putting him on, but that's really it. Overall, I think I lost kind of some brain cells on that ending. I thought Nick Berry called a relatively decent game again up until this point. I, despite not being the biggest England fan, I understand that while, even if they didn't call obstruction, it was a held up. Bowden Barrett did a great job of really holding Jamie up at the end. I think to call it an obstruction, despite the fact that it was a perfectly legal shear and the back was the only guy, there, is just boneheaded call. I don't get it. Perhaps I need to be more educated. I'm only a touch judge in certification. Perhaps I need to learn more. But as a fan, I just kind of scratched my head and lost some brain cells and definitely spilled a couple things in my house because of that. I really didn't think the game would end like that, but it did. And on top of that, I think what I didn't like is that they kept the time running like a good minute and change until that. Like even if it was held up, England still would have had a chance. It would have been a great minute half, 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes left. And instead it was like 10 seconds and it led to a lot of frantic play and obviously didn't end the right way. So being that as it may, I think England can hold their heads high. I think they did a lot of big things against a great New Zealand side with Bowden Barrett on the field. I think Razor has a lot to work on moving forward. I think getting that win under his belt was a good thing. But I think you're going to see a different team come in November when they go to the North. And I think it'll be a great thing to see. And for all those who are not coming, catch me in the end zone. I'll see you, boys. It'll be an interesting run. Generational for this. Never got to see the All Blacks play personally until, at least on domestic soil until now. So I think it'll be good to see versus the CB Tau versus the Haka. But enough of that. I know I was supposed to do a team of the week this week, but I think what's better for this series is just to go for a team of the series. I thought that it would leave a lot less players out that I think deserve to be there if it wasn't for injury, if it wasn't for, lack of selection, etc. They need to be on this team. So let's start off in my front row. I went with James Slipper, Dewey Lake, and Taniela Tupou. I know Wales got blown the brakes off their scrums, but That's why Slipper and Tupo are there. But Lake really held up a lot of the forwards and Welsh deficiencies in that pack, doing a great job really captaining at such a young age. And on top of that, just still being that dominant player that he is day in and day out. I think it was a great thing to watch. Second row, I went with Mario Toje and Botham from the Welsh side. Beautiful, beautiful plays on both ends. Itoje just being still probably one of the best, if not the best, lock on planet Earth. And you got Botham, who is just rip roaring through a lot of the breakdowns that the Australians couldn't really handle. I don't think they could really handle a lot of the strength that they brought that first game. And I think losing Rainwright had a little bit of a problem because they were that 1-2 punch. But being that as a man, I think he deserved a spot on here in the 15. As for the back row, I went with Charles Cunningham South, Peter Steph Dutoy, and Kalen Doris. You could argue I should have put Alan Wainwright on here, but he just lost out because Kalen Doris, outside of that boneheaded thing that he did to Malcolm Marks, deserved to be on this spot. I don't think he was the greatest captain, but oh well. Peter Steph Dutoy, one more have I said that I cannot say again. Cunningham South, again, same as last week, being around the ball, doing everything possible, kind of almost being in that Charlie Ewell's or, almost in that realm of old, old, old English loose forwards, just big boy, constantly around the ball, able to take down everything. Beautiful thing to see. For my halves pairing, I went with Alex Mitchell. Again, great game management, great sniping with the ball, just great IQ to know when to kick, when not to kick. I think that's something that I'm gonna have to teach my kids moving forward in when I coach, is just having that kind of game IQ and sending them that way. It was a benchmark to see. As for my 10, I'm with Marcus Smith. I really thought that overall, don't get me wrong, I probably could have put a Noah Lolesio. I could have put a Jack Crowley, but man, Marcus Smith did a great job both weeks, in the pocket and out of the pocket, just handling a lot of the adversity that England dealt with, I think, this year. And it was nice to see. Overall, I put Freeman at my 11 again for the same reasons I said before. It was nice to see him really do that. I probably could have picked, don't get me wrong, a Cheslin Kolbe, Kurtley Aronsa, but decided to stick with my guns and keep him there. I think he deserved the love I didn't give him in the first week. So there you go. For my 12 and 13, I went with Ollie Lawrence and Henry Slade. Again, very reason, game management and just ability to always be around at every point, be a backup player, forwards role. The both of them did that very well. And they took a lot of licks to get there. For 14, I ended up going with Emmanuel Fei Waboso. I know he didn't really score a lot of tries for the second week, but if you're looking at what he was able to do off the ball, I think really put him in that spot to really deserve to be on this list. I probably could have put Filippo Dongunu. He's on this list just in the bench, but I thought Waboso being as young as he is versus Dongunu's age, I think really showed a lot of growth in that role. 15, I had to go with Bowden Barrett. He's that dude. I probably would have given captaincy of the squad if that was a thing. Maybe I should do that moving forward. But yeah, he deserved a spot. As for my front row off the bench, I went with a 5-3 split. I went with Oxenechea, Jamie George, and Franz Malherba. Again, great at set piece, great on the run, good with the maul, and that goes for all of them. Jamie George, especially, just to help keep his side a little bit more level headed than I think they would have been prior. I think having Jamie George as a captain really helped bringing this all together. Don't get me wrong. I mean, having Ellis Genge as a captain before with Eddie Jones and the early Borthwick games, I thought was okay, but I really think they thrived more underneath Jamie George's leadership. He's been really solid the entirety of the year. I think it could have been an easy flip between Dewey Lake and Jamie George in this lineup for me. As for my second row, I went with Tog Byrne just because he's Tog Byrne. I mean, come on. Like he was balling out in the first game, relatively the same in the second game, just not as impactful. I think it was spread around a lot more love-wise between the forwards as to who was getting breakdown help and getting the meter eaters in that. But he's that dude regardless in this every step of the work. I think I put Aaron Wainwright at 20. Like I said, I could have put him instead of uh, Peter Stuff Dutoy. I think having him be lost with Malcolm Marks is going to hurt the box. But, Wainwright with his ACL tear is a real sad thing to see. I think if he played that second game, I probably would have given him a spot in that starting pack just because he is a freak. And I love playing with him on Rugby 24 and in Rugby Nations 24 on the phone. For all those that don't know, you guys should get that game. I know it's a little simple, it's a little whack, but you can't expect the best out of a rugby game. You're not getting EA Sports or 2K running games anymore. So, such is life. But overall, with the rest of this lineup, I went with Jake Gordon. Again, great game management, great interplay with the backs and forwards. On top of that, great ability to just score tries. Jake Gordon was a freak. Filippo Dungunu, another freak. Again, talked about it once. I probably shouldn't go over it again. But yeah, I really loved watching him do what he did there. And George Furbank probably could have took 15 if it wasn't for Bowden Barrett doing back-to-back master classes of what it is to be a back. But that's really going to be it this week. Shout out, by the way, to the homies over at Noodle Bags. Thanks for the swag, and I will see you guys hopefully at All Blacks versus Fiji if you guys aren't going to the Southern California games just yet. But thanks again, this week. That's all gonna be all for me, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.